Welcome. If you're a woman who has a sense that there's more out there for you, you're in the right place. I'm Whitney Baker, host of the Electric Ideas podcast. Somewhere along the line of work and kids, life carried on, but I lost track of my truth. I'm on a reflective journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. Each week, I interview a woman who is lighting her own path and offering others hope. Before our conversation ends, we'll share a reflective question for you to explore. Sometimes all we need is a jolt, a fresh idea, an aha moment that connects us to a sense of possibility. This, my friends, is what I call an electric idea.
Welcome back to Electric Ideas. I'm your host, Whitney Baker, and this is a mini jolt, a shorter episode where I share honest insights and soulful tools to help you stay connected to what matters. I want your life to feel more intentional, more grounded, more joy-lit from the inside out. It's all about the inside job, and we're diving into that today. So let's begin. Today, we're exploring a theme that comes up often in my communities and conversations, and that is losing yourself in motherhood. I'm going to walk you through why this is a common phenomenon, and then just to help you identify if this might be something you're experiencing, I'm going to share some signs that you might be living from a place of self-disconnection. I'll end with a few powerful ways for you to start following what I call those breadcrumbs back to feeling like yourself again, like the person you know outside of the roles you play as mom, as employee, as the person who contributes to the community, etc. So here's what I've found to be true for many women. This loss of sense of self isn't some dramatic moment. It's more of a slow drift, the kind where you don't necessarily even realize it's happening until one day you look up and you're like, whoa, where did I go? I know that I personally went through this, and a feeling of lost self-identity can happen at many times in life. But I'll say from my experience that it wasn't until my kids got just a little bit older and I was able to come up for air a bit on my motherhood journey when I wasn't worried someone was going to choke on something or fall down the stairs. I had a little bit more spaciousness in my life. And that's when I realized I almost had an ache, a loneliness, but a loneliness for that sense of being that I forgot about. It was almost like a feeling that pieces of myself had been put on the shelf and were just collecting dust. And I was craving some self-reclamation, if you will. From many years of working with women, I can tell you if you are experiencing this, it can be confusing. It can feel murky. It's hard to articulate sometimes, but it's common. And you are so not alone in these feelings. It's only in hindsight and having done the personal work and the professional work I do that I can really understand why this is such a common experience for women. And part of it is cultural. Many of us have been taught to believe that good moms are selfless, that air quote, good women put everyone's needs first. And my gosh, that narrative runs so deep. And of course, being a mom involves a certain amount of sacrifice. It's a big deal. You're bringing humans into the world and you're choosing and making space for that beautiful and meaningful contribution and responsibility. But I feel like we under-acknowledge how staggering the mental load of motherhood is for moms these days. Every generation of women raising children has had their own set of challenges. And I am not getting into the game of who had it better, who had it worse. It's just an acknowledgement that it's different right now for moms to be so mentally and emotionally. I don't want to be this accessible, but it's almost part of the game with motherhood. Like, I want to focus on my child, not being emailed about 17 things about their classroom and camps, not being texted all the time to coordinate things. Don't even get me started on the fact that most of my kids' activities, maybe it's just sports culture, have their own individual apps that I'm supposed to be paying attention to and messaging in. And it's something that really bothers me and I get upset about and I want to solve for women because we live in this world of overstimulation and more people and groups being able to access and try to make demands on our time and our energy. And sometimes we just have that urge to burn it all down all we want is to drop in and relax and be present and actually enjoy the people that matter most. And I feel like this layer of having to be available in so many places as a mom is just part of the modern pressure cooker reality that we're in right now. So the demands and the pressures of motherhood are real, and they are exacerbated by the technologically advanced age we live in. But we can change the way we relate to ourselves and we honor ourselves so that our day to day life feels nourishing and intentional, not like a slow blur of just trying to keep the ships running. With these real life responsibilities of keeping a household running, navigating our marriage, and keeping our foot in the professional world, many women slip into this autopilot living way of being where it's almost like they wake up reacting to everything the world is throwing at them and completely forgetting the small things that once made us feel alive. Maybe it's the daily walks or creative projects, the friendships, the curiosity, the parts of ourselves that weren't tied to anyone else's needs or deadlines. So we live in a complicated world. It's not entirely your fault if you feel bombarded and like you've abandoned your sense of self. But if you want to feel self connected and self honoring, it is your responsibility to find your way back. And this isn't going to happen overnight, but rather through small, intentional steps. I want to acknowledge that we all have seasons where life is especially full. Little kids, death in the family, somebody lost their job, and we have to meet ourselves where we're at. And sometimes that includes with lots of grace and compassion. But when we tip into permanently staying disconnected from ourselves, I don't think that that is a sustainable way of being. I've seen it happen. I've seen the writing on the wall, and it's happened with many of my clients where, if not addressed, it leads to burnout, exhaustion, and a lot of resentment towards the people who you are trying to love the most and protect. Because when you put yourself in the corner and you complain and you make excuses, you become completely depleted and you really can't show up fully for anyone. So, how do you know if you're tiptoeing around that place? First of all, your intuition has probably already told you. If you're leaning into this conversation and have a sense of knowing, then that's all you need to know. But sometimes, for all the reasons I've been talking about, it's tricky for women to find space to pause and really look at themselves and their lives with a clear-eyed lens. So see if any of these examples that I've witnessed in my clients feel alive for you. One example, you can't remember the last time you felt like you were genuinely having fun in the present moment and enjoying yourself. This doesn't mean that you aren't doing things that look fun on paper or planning fun things for your family. This is all about your own emotional experience and if you actually felt good in that experience. Another example is you can't remember the last time you lost track of time because you were immersed in something that felt good for you. A lot of my clients also say they just feel off and stretched and like they can't get their act together and like they're on a hamster wheel and they just can't quite put their finger on why. And a lot of that has to do with feeling disconnected and out of control internally. So we tend to chase and try to have that feeling of little wins in front of us, but it doesn't get to that root cause. It doesn't get to that sense of hunger for sense of self and true satisfaction. So it's quite a self-defeating loop. I could go on, but I will just give one or two more examples. If you are someone who had a shift professionally and you realize that a lot of your worth and value were wrapped up inside of the role you played professionally, and you feel a large void in that absence, and you understand mentally that you are way more than the roles you play. But if you're being totally honest with yourself, your sense of self is diminished. And then finally, I already mentioned this, but a big red flag is feeling resentful, specifically when a partner perhaps gets to travel for work or go out or simply do anything without managing that mental load and calendar that moms are frequently called upon to juggle. So, if any of these examples felt like mirrors for you, I want you to know it doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. Something I've learned is that you can take these disgruntled, murky emotions as a blessing, as a signal, an invitation to pause and reassess and acknowledge that you are on a threshold, but that your soul, your being, whatever you want to call it, is telling you that there's a different way of being for you. I'll give you an example from my own life. I experienced a little bit of friction last summer because if I'm being totally honest, quite painstakingly crafted my world and my life and my work so that I had a couple free weeks at home when my girls didn't have camp where we could hang out and chill and go on adventures and soak it all in. And I was so happy and proud of myself that I had made that happen. But the reality is that now that my kids are older, they're in junior high, their days are a little unpredictable. Some mornings they sleep, some days they are waiting on friends to make plans, and they don't want to commit to anything until they hear back from friends. And you're just in this weird limbo of wanting to spend time with them, but also not wanting to waste away the most meaningful part of your day. So this summer, I had a couple similar windows and I couldn't really change my circumstances. And these were circumstances I chose, but I listened to that part of me that felt cut off from self, that felt disgruntled last summer. And I made a choice that instead of being like, what are we doing tomorrow? When do we want to hang out? I gave myself a certain set of time, usually a couple of hours each day, that were my not available time just for me, even though I already have my own early morning rhythms and meditation practice and routines. This window became this space where I wasn't available. And it's where I did some of my own creative work. I knew I could exercise. I could do a little bit of focused work, the things that honored the parts of me that need to be nurtured in order for me to feel lit up from within and feel like I have light to share with others. And guess what? My kids could care less about this boundary I gave them. If anything, it was much easier to be like, when are you available? Oh, okay. I'll hang out with my friend then, and then we can do this. But it really protected my energy. And it reminded me of the importance of the work I do with women. That's what reclaiming your sense of self can be like if you open up to it. It doesn't mean blowing up your entire life. It means shifting your relationship to it, making small, sacred choices, meeting yourself exactly where you are, even if you are in the messy middle of motherhood, like most of us, and making choices that honor yourself and keep you connected to your own needs and wants and desires. And doing this imperfectly again and again and again, especially when the outer world is demanding. I really try to speak from the heart and speak from the truth of what I've traversed. And I'm feeling like I want to also share that if you are in this season where everything feels a bit murky, who am I? What am I doing? What's going on? Do I have time for anything? You're a little bit misaligned. I want you to know that trying harder probably isn't going to get you where you're trying to go. You do not need to be more. You do not need to push more. You don't need to stay up later. What you probably need the most is to learn how to soften, how to slow down, how to shed some stress, metabolize stress in a healthy way. Because it's only when you give yourself that opportunity to distance yourself from the go, 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 everything's on my shoulders, everything's my responsibility mode, that you can listen inward, that you can catch up with yourself. And that's the work. And it's not always easy. But what I've learned is that contentment doesn't come from chasing, of doing more to fill that uneasy void of not knowing yourself outside of the roles you play, but rather from giving yourself permission to slow down and listen and honor. So, just to bring this full circle, it is very common for women to wake up to a beautiful life with many things to be grateful for, but also to live with a quiet longing for more. But only you can speak into what that more looks like. It might be more peace. It might be more time for a hobby. It might be more deep connections in relationship. It might be more work. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's only for you to know. That's why I'm so passionate about self-connection work, because it's only for you to know. So if you are feeling called to slow down, to self-connect, to self-assess, to realign a little bit with your life right now, I've got several free tools that can support you. You can message me directly on Instagram at @WhitneyWoman, and I'll do my best to share with you whatever tool I feel like would be of best service for you. And if you're that woman who is coming up for air a little bit on your mothering journey, and you'd like a little bit more structure to melt into for this self-connection work, I want to invite you into my Season to Shift 6-week guided experience for women that starts at the end of September. Doors officially open today. This is an intentionally intimate group, so there's actually only a handful of slots left. And it's a beautiful community of women who have poured energy into their family and work and community and are ready to pour a little of that love back into themselves. This is a program that is intentionally created to weave into your everyday life. We meet live for an hour once a week during the day on Wednesdays. And that's where you experience the teachings, the community, and you experience some of the tools that have really accelerated this sense of homecoming for many of my clients. I think we all want to remember what makes us feel alive and honor our own needs, because we know that when we do, it has a ripple effect, that everybody in our orbit is impacted. But it's tricky sometimes to consistently create this type of space for yourself. So I've done it for you with the Season to Shift container. You can find a link to Season to Shift, and it has all the details about dates and times and that sort of stuff, because I recognize that's what's holding many of you back. If you have any questions about the program or anything else I've touched on today, again, you're more than welcome to message me on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. You can message me at @WhitneyWoman. I always end my episodes with an opportunity for reflection. So today, ask yourself this: where am I abandoning myself right now? And what's one micro action I could take this week to support that layer of me that is calling for attention? Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Be well.
I'm so glad you joined me today. If you're looking for more, feel free to connect with me on Instagram at @WhitneyWoman. And if you enjoyed the show, I invite you to support me by leaving a review or sharing it with a friend. Hope you have an inspired day.